Good morning and welcome to Melrose Unitarian Universalist Church. Our service today is called Nature's Best Hope. It's you. I am the Reverend Dr. Suzanne Intriligator. I am pleased to be the minister of this congregation. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm so glad to see so many with us this morning and on Zoom too. Good morning on Zoom. Well, just a couple of quick announcements before we get started proper today. This is the first Sunday of the month, so it's a great time to remind you that we have a green bin out in the entry hall. That's where we collect food. We used to collect it for local food banks and deliver it to them once a month in the first week of the month, but now we do it every week, so it's even more important for you to fill it when you come in the morning. We would love you to do that more often because your neighbors need you, especially now. Also today, after worship, at 12 noon, we have our monthly anti-racism conversation, which happens the first Sunday of every month. It will be in Parish Hall at noon and also via Zoom. It's a hybrid. The link for that is in today's worship reminder, which should be at the very top of your email inbox right now. Speaking of anti-racism, we regularly acknowledge that our church sits on the unceded lands of the native Massachusetts people. To support Native people in our state, we ask members and friends to check out the website maindigenousagenda.org. There you can learn about current legislative efforts. Right now, the state's Indigenous Peoples Day bill is stuck in committee. If you go to maindigenousagenda.org, just a few clicks, you can tell your state reps to get it moving along. Coffee hour today will be out on the front lawn, hosted by the Griscoms, who are making and serving the coffee and snacks. Thank you, Mary Beth and Dan. With good weather coming and restrictions possibly easing in the future, we will likely be serving coffee now every week, so we need folks to sign up and help make it. Church can provide food, but we do need people to make the coffee. If you drink it, you can make it. There'll be a sign-up coming in this week's email news. Also in this week's email news will be your opportunity to reserve a spot at our church's Passover Seder happening on April 15th. Downstairs, we'll provide Seder plates, chicken, matzo ball soup, and prayers. You just bring a side dish and your lovely self. Now, we have one more announcement that was a surprise to me this morning. For the month of April, our Giving Beyond Our Walls is a new group for us called Extinction Rebellion Boston. And here to tell you more about it is John Burkhart. Would you come up right here and speak into this microphone for us? You can take off your mask and I'll put mine
on. Yeah, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me to introduce myself. My name's John Burkhart. I live in Arlington, and I am a climate activist working with a group called Extinction Rebellion. I'd never done anything like this before in my life until about 3 years ago. And I'd like to invite you all to a talk that I'm going to be giving right here about 3 weeks from, it's 3 weeks from Tuesday, so that's on the 26th of April at 7 p.m. And we'll be talking about the climate crisis, what it means for our lives, and what it means for our society. There'll be some discussions about this topic, and I'll be inviting you to learn more about Extinction Rebellion and consider joining us, or if not joining us, supporting us in some way. And we're also hosting an event on Earth Day. That's a Friday. It's April 22nd, and that'll be at Copley Square, Boston, 3:30 p.m. Now, normally, Extinction Rebellion does employ a tactic of protest and of civil resistance, and sometimes nonviolent direct action and civil disobedience. We will not be doing that at that event. This will be family friendly. All are invited. There'll be music, there'll be costumes, beautiful artwork, and it's really important now that we step up and show up to these kinds of events physically, that we be physically present. It does make a difference to show the world, to show our leaders, our government, that a lot of people really do care deeply about this issue. So thanks again. It's great to see you all, and I'll be here at the coffee hour if anyone wants to talk more about it. Okay, thank you.
I see at the back that lovely Wendy is trying to tell me something, but I don't know what she's trying to tell me. Are these handouts for the Extinction Rebellion events? Oh, good. Okay, so you can pick those up on your way out today. Thank you, Wendy. Wonderful. Wendy is our trusty usher this morning. Thanks for your help. Now it is our weekly moment to greet one another. In person, we wave to one another. If we're wearing our green wristbands, we can actually shake hands or hug, and we wave to people who are joining us online today as well. Good morning, everybody. Oh, I see some smiling faces. Nice to see you all. Thank you for coming. Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for making worship part of your day today. I call us to worship this morning with an excerpt from the poem A Vision by Wendell Berry. If we will have the wisdom to survive, to stand like slow-growing trees on a ruined place, renewing it, enriching it, if we will make our seasons welcome here, asking not too much of earth or heaven, then a long time after we are dead, the lives our lives prepare will live. Their houses strongly placed upon the valley sides, fields and gardens rich in the meadows. They will take nothing from the ground, they will not return, whatever the grief at parting. The abundance of this place, the songs of its people and its birds will be health and wisdom and indwelling light. This is no paradisal dream. Its hardship is its possibility. Now we light together the symbol of our faith, the flaming chalice. Here to do it for us this week is longtime member and Green Sanctuary team member for forever, Doug Dick. Oh, and Ann, his lovely wife, is coming up with him, Ann and Doug.
For the Web of Life by Paul Sprecher. We light this chalice for the web of life which sustains us, for the sacred circle of life in which we have our being, for the earth, the sky, above and below, and for our Mother Earth, and for the mystery.
Thank you, Ann and Doug. Just briefly, Wendy, can you make sure that the ventilator in that corner has been turned on? I didn't check it this morning. Thank you.
No.
Our
Our opening hymn this morning is Morning Has Broken. Lyrics will be shown on a slide here and also on Zoom, but if you would like to look at it, it's number 38 in our hymnal. Please rise in body or in spirit and let's sing together. Morning has broken like the first morning. Blackbird has spoken
remain standing and join me in the words of our covenant, which are here on your screen. There we go. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve humankind in fellowship, to the end that all souls shall grow into harmony with the divine. This is our great covenant, one with another and with our God. Thank you. Please be seated. And now it's time for our story. Oh, the chalice is very low this morning. I wonder why. It is lit. Maybe you can't see it, but it is lit. So it's time for our story. This is a true story based on a narrative that I found in Doug Tallamy's book, Nature's Best Hope. I changed it a little, adding some fictional names and some illustrations. Once upon a time, let's say in the year 2020, there was a man, let's call him Ted. Ted lived in a beautiful suburban town, in a beautiful suburban house, and he liked to keep it tidy and beautiful. To Ted, the ideal landscape was pruned and mowed with colors blooming throughout the seasons, always manicured and perfect. Ted considered his large, immaculate lawn a sign of respectable neighborhood stewardship. He was doing his part to maintain property values and to spare his neighbors from blowing dead leaves and dandelion spores. On the weekends, when he's not gardening, Ted loves to go walking and hiking. He considers himself a real nature lover, and being among the trees gives him a deep sense of peace. In spring 2020, however, when Ted was out walking in a local preservation area, he stopped to admire a little stream. It made a lovely little babbling noise, and so he bent down to look closer at it. The water was so clear, and it was so empty. I don't get it, Ted thought to himself. When I was a kid, this very stream was full of stuff: tadpoles, dragonflies, minnows, toads, turtles. Where is everything? Ted's stomach felt a bit queasy, so he went home. That afternoon, Ted's phone rang. It was Ted's daughter. Let's call her Penny. Now, she doesn't share Ted's approach to gardening. In fact, she used to lecture him about things like watershed, pollinators, and carbon sequestration. But Ted really wasn't interested in listening. After a while, they just agreed to disagree. Tonight, Penny asked Ted if he would come by to babysit his grandkids, little Amanda and Teddy. Why, of course, says Ted. On the way over, though, he realizes he's been babysitting a lot in recent months. And when he gets to Penny's, he says, "Penny, what's going on? What have you been doing lately?" "Well, Dad," she says, "I've been volunteering for this group called Monarch Watch. It's a national organization that promotes the creation and restoration of monarch habitats. We also provide host and nectar plants needed to rebuild butterfly populations. So all over town, in parks and open spaces and yards, when we're invited, we've been planting sunflowers and milkweed and blue aster." "But why?" said Ted. Why do you need to do that?" "Well, Dad, because monarch caterpillars feed exclusively on milkweeds. And adult butterflies, the monarch ones, really like blue asters. But because nobody plants those anymore, the monarchs are going. In the last 10 years, monarch populations have declined 96%. Ted thought about the monarchs. He thought about the stream that he'd seen nearby with no insects in it at all, and he began to wonder. The next day, Ted called Penny and asked if she might put a few of those milkweed plants along his back fence. "Well, of course," said Penny. And Penny planted a whole row of milkweeds along Ted's back fence. Just a few days later, Ted called to say he'd seen an egg. The next day, he called to say he'd seen a monarch, and then another, and another, and another. "I don't think I'm going to have enough food for all these caterpillars," Ted told Penny. "I need more milkweed, and I need some blue asters for the adults." Ted was hooked. The monarchs had awakened his loving paternal instincts, and he nurtured them as his own. They gave him great joy all summer long. A year later, Ted was thrilled to hear, via Monarch Watch, that monarch populations were perhaps bouncing back. In 2020, volunteers had counted just 2,000 butterflies in the whole state of California. But in 2021, they counted 250,000, a 100-fold increase in just 1 year. Well, Ted thought about it, and he realized if he could use his property to help save monarchs, maybe he could also help other species. He read up and he learned that because his lawn and all his lovely ornamental plants were not native to his area, they offered nothing, no nourishment at all to all the insects that evolved to live there too. Ted realized if he planted native species like milkweeds, native insects would come back, as would the birds that feed on them. With careful planting, Ted thought he could help save other endangered species like the zebra swallowtail, the northern cardinal, or the Carolina chickadee. "Oh my," thought Ted, "there is a whole world to discover, or rather, to reintroduce to my backyard." And so he did. He took up half his lawn and planted all sorts of native ground cover and shrubbery and wildflowers, and back came the insects, and back came the birds. And with all that nature came boundless joy, which Ted shared daily with neighbors and friends, children and grandchildren. The end. Each week we take a few minutes out of worship for prayer and meditation, a time for each of us to center ourselves and connect with the holy, however it is we understand the holy. Let's start by relaxing into our chairs, feeling our feet on the floor, letting our bodies settle. Let's breathe in and out together. In this meditation time, first we'll join in our centering song. Then we'll sit for a few minutes of shared silence. Then we'll speak to one another of our joys and sorrows, and I will lead a prayer. Our worship theme for April is Awakening. It's a month to awaken along with the springtime, to refresh our awareness of our deeply interconnected nature, of our interdependence with all living things. Our centering song for the month is Wake Now My Senses, verses 1 and 4. Sing along as you like, and let the noises of little children and the bird song in the video guide you gently into our time of shared silence.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth roll. Feel the deep power of being it all. Keep with the web of creation your bow, giving, receiving as the love shows us how. Wake now my vision of ministry clear, brighten my pathway with radiance here. Mingle my calling with all who will share. Work toward a planet transformed by our prayer.
Every Sunday, we share with one another the joys and sorrows of our lives, our personal milestones. We listen with openness and compassion, letting this sharing weave us into an ever stronger community. If you have a sorrow to share today and you're at home, please go ahead and type it into the chat box now, and I will read them aloud. And Mark, who is also ushering, will read the ones that people have submitted here on paper. There's the mic, if you'd step all the way up. And that one you've got to get really close to, especially with a mask on. You can take your mask off if you want, Mark. You can, go ahead. So these, we will start with the sorrows that we have to share. Go ahead, Mark. Can you hear him?
Hear me? You heard that. A candle of love and healing for my friend's daughter, Kelly, who underwent a spinal fusion this week. That is from Florence. Second concern is beset by obstacles, seem unfixable, crisis.
Thank you, Mark. And I will look for the sorrows on Zoom. I don't see any in the chat box. Let me just double check, give people a chance. No, I don't have any sorrows from our online people today. Let's take a moment to hold all the sorrows that have been shared, and also those are our own personal sorrows that we are holding. Let's hold them in our hearts and breathe for just a moment. May we remember to reach out to people we know in our lives who are hurting with kindness. And may all those who have sorrow today feel our love and connection. Mark, if you would light the gray candle as a beacon of our care for all the sorrows spoken and unspoken today. And now I ask for all the joys that you would like to share. People online, go ahead and type them into the chat box. And we'll start with Mark sharing any that were submitted here.
One joy from Cheryl. Lily had a dance competition yesterday, and her group dances won third and second place for their age category.
That's wonderful. Brian Johnson also asked me to share his joy at his 30th wedding anniversary. So happy anniversary to Brian and Darby. Thank you for all the joys you've shared this morning. By sharing these joys, you help us connect to one another and to the beauty of living. We now light one more candle to shine out our gratitude for all the joys in our lives. Thank you, Mark. Please join me in the spirit of prayer. I have a springtime prayer written by the Reverend George A. Tiger, who is a UU chaplain in the U.S. Army stationed at Fort Bragg. O power of springtime, spirit of green grasses and warm breezes, goddess of creativity, of birth, of life renewed, you sing all about us at this time. The birds call your sacred name. Buds burst forth with your vestments. The sun reaches higher into the sky, shining the light of this new day through the windows of your cathedral, this world. O power of springtime, forgive us our speediness and our racing before your eternal grace, that we do not see the miracle world we share. Open our eyes with your warmth and our hearts with your beauty. Slow our minds with awe and wonder. Dear spirit of green grasses and warm breezes, let us find here, in these moments of quiet, the grace of your breath as we breathe into our bodies the spirit of spring. Amen. Now is the time for our offertory. Our church is a self-supporting organization funded by your generous annual pledge. You may also contribute to our weekly collection plate, which we split every month with a deserving cause. Either way, you can donate using the orange button in the top right-hand corner of our homepage at melroseuu.org. People here in the room can leave their donations in the plate at the back on the way out. For April, our giving partner, chosen by our Green Sanctuary team, is Extinction Rebellion Boston, which our friend John Burkhart told us about earlier today. Thank you. Extinction Rebellion is a politically nonpartisan international movement that uses direct action to persuade governments to act justly about the climate emergency. Our offertory music this morning is appropriately recycled music. Our choir first put this piece together for the service that I led in October called The Social Life of Trees. You may remember. It was so beautiful, I promised them that I would use it again at my first opportunity when it matched the theme. So here's our choir with a setting of another poem by the great contemporary conservationist and Kentucky farmer, Wendell Berry. This is Great Trees.
slowly they return to the small woodland alone. Gray trees outspreading and grown bright, apostles of the living light. Patient as stars they build in earth, dear after dear, timbered wire, stout beams upholding greatest grace, a song blessing on this place. They stand in waiting all around, uprisings of their native ground, downcomings of the distant light. They hurry and they await, receiving sun and giving shade. Their lives a benefaction made, and is a benediction said over the living and the dead. In God and right and breeze release, lie down the wind and we are pleased to walk on radiance our rays. O light, come down to earth, be praised.
And now it's sermon time. Well, it is just great, isn't it, to be right about something? You know, when you're in the middle of an argument with someone and it feels really heated, but then it turns out that you were right. You did predict that thing. You were right all along, and they have to admit it. And you get to do a little victory dance. My husband's watching, I hope. Isn't that just the best feeling? Well, this week, I learned again, for the millionth time in my life, that actually that isn't the best. Sometimes it's even better to be wrong, because being wrong is where the growth is. That's when you get to learn something and actually get to be a better person in the process. This week, I was wrong again, and I'm pretty glad about it. It started with the recent meeting of the Green Sanctuary team. It's one of our biggest and most productive teams here at church. I had stopped by just to say hi, to say, how are you doing, and is there any way that I can help? I knew that they were planning a spring book read, and I knew it had something to do with planting native plants, and I knew they had scheduled the book discussion for an upcoming Monday, which is my day off. So I was sure I was not going to read this book. No way. I'm not a gardener. I don't care about plants. It's not my thing, and you can't make it my thing. But then Liz Folzer did something surprising and, I don't know, maybe even sneaky, I don't know. She just handed me the book. And you know how when people hand you like flyers and coupons and stuff, you end up just taking them because you don't know what else to do? And so I took the book, and I realized I was stuck. A week later, the Green Sanctuary team thankfully sent out an email. If you run out of time to read the book, which I had, you can watch this clip on YouTube. The author says he lays it all out there in just one talk. But when I sat down and I watched it, turned out that talk was an hour and a half long. So I set it to double speed, and I watched the whole thing, and it was really funny. Yeah, okay, it was mildly amusing, but I did understand what he was saying, and I ended up slowing it down. And within minutes of the start of this presentation, I was absolutely hooked. just like the guy Ted in our story. Turns out, just like Ted, I was totally wrong about what this whole thing was about. I was wrong. Is there a little dance that you do when you're wrong? Maybe we could make one? Doug Tallamy, this is the book, by the way. Doug Tallamy is an entomologist, a professor at the University of Delaware, and the author of this book, among several others. And he fills his highly engaging TED Talk with lots and lots of photos, so right from the start, you get pulled into the story of the acorn beetle. It's a weird-looking bug with a really long nose, like out to here, which it turns out is actually its mouth. And it uses that thing, whatever it is, to dig a hole into an acorn and lay its egg inside there. Then the acorn falls from the tree, and that egg becomes a larva, and that crawls out of the hole and digs its way underground and lives underground as a pupa for 2 years. Cool, right? Now, I've looked at bugs before, but what I had never really thought about is that this particular bug evolved here in North America over the course of thousands of generations to dig its weird nose mouth into that specific kind of acorn. What I had never really thought about is that how specific all of this is. If you plant a certain plant, you get the insect that comes with that plant, the one that evolved to eat that plant and that plant only. Then you get the birds that evolved to eat that particular insect and that insect only, and so on, and so on, and so on. That's what nature is, I just learned. It's millions and millions and millions of very particular relationships between species because they evolve together. They evolve to be dependent on one another. So when you get one, you get the other. And when you don't have the one, you don't have the other. That's how ecosystems worked until humans came along. And they brought with them plants, and they keep bringing these plants and buying these plants from other places, plants that evolved in other places under totally different conditions. So our insects, the ones who live here, have nothing to eat. And the birds that evolved here now have nothing to eat. The average yard in Melrose, I learned this week, is something like 70 or 80 or even 90% non-native plants. Even our forests, our parks, our local tree stands you see along the freeway, they're full of non-native plants. So that's why when you go for a walk in the woods and you look down in the leaves or in the little stream, like in the story, you don't see a lot of tadpoles or dragonflies or earthworms or toads or frogs or turtles or birds, because lots of them are just gone. Do you remember when it was different? I do. I've always been a city person, not much of a nature person at all, but I remember very clearly when I was a kid in the backyard, and I'd pick up a rock, and there would be bugs everywhere, roly-polies underneath it. And I loved bugs and roly-polies when I was a kid, and earthworms and ants, and I could watch them all day long. And I remember what it was like to hold a frog in my hand, or to watch a snake, like a garden snake, slither through my backyard. Do you all remember that? These days, it's really different out there. I don't know if you've noticed. I have, and I'm not a good noticer. In the last few years, when I walk in the woods or even sit in my backyard, I've noticed that it's pretty plain. There's just a lot less life of all kinds everywhere. So you probably want the numbers at this point. How much have we lost? When it comes to insects, actually, scientists don't really know. Over the last centuries, they've managed to identify and name 1 million species of insects. But now they estimate that million is maybe 20% of what was there. That was the kind of diversity that existed until recently. But insects, you know, they're mostly invisible to us and they're hidden most of the time, and they haven't really been studied that intensely for that long. But we have guesses. Oh, well, first we say, how many have been lost? How much of that massive population is already gone? And the thing is, we don't know because we weren't counting them a generation ago. We didn't anticipate losing them, so we didn't have a count to start from. But we have guesses. So there was a 2017 German study that found flying insects there in Germany had decreased by as much as 82% in the last 30 years. Other studies have estimated 50 to 80% losses. As a result of the insects going, the birds are going. Based on a paper in the journal Science, the Washington Post reported in 2019 that North America had lost 3 billion birds in the last 50 years. Billion with a B. In his video, Doug Tallamy says, let me remind you how big a billion is. 1 million seconds is 12 days. 1 billion seconds is 31 years. So that's a huge difference. If every second is a bird, 93 years worth of bird seconds is a lot of birds. I guess I used to think until this week that birds ate seeds. By putting out a bird feeder, I thought I was helping, right? But now I know that to raise their young, birds depend on caterpillars, which are bigger and more nutritionally dense than seeds. Birds need caterpillars, specific caterpillars, whose specific chemistry the birds have evolved to depend on. If and when all these complex ecosystems fail, and there's no doubt that's already starting, you can imagine what happens to humankind. A planet without plants and animals is not a planet that can sustain humans. Okay, that's the bad news. Here is finally the good news. You can plant these plants. The ones upon whom all this diversity depends, you can plant them today. And within weeks or months, you will see the bugs come back, and the birds, and even chipmunks and squirrels and beavers and toads and snakes. That can happen. People are doing it. People here in Melrose are doing it. And there's even better news. You don't have to plant all the plants, just some of them. It turns out that there are some plant species that are just powerhouses when it comes to supporting bird and insect life. While non-native plants support exactly 0 species of native insects and birds, some native plants can support hundreds of species. Tallamy calls them keystone plants. And number 1 is the mighty oak. A single oak tree can support 436 different species of caterpillars. 436 different species on one oak tree. So if you plant one in your yard, think of the diversity that you are saving. Next in line behind the oak are native species like cherry, plum, cottonwood, box elder, some maples, and some pines. Some of these can support more than 200 species of caterpillar. And if you don't have space for a tree, how about a shrub? Blueberry and willow shrubs can each sustain 200 kinds of caterpillars and 14 species of pollen specialist bees. How about flowers? If you want flowers in your yard, you can plant asters and sunflowers, goldenrod, black-eyed Susans, and through them you'll be supporting hundreds of kinds of caterpillars and up to 50 different species of pollinator bees. Doug Tallamy, the guy who wrote this, partnered with the National Wildlife Federation to create all sorts of online resources that you can use to find out the native plant species that are most needed in your area. If you just Google National Wildlife Federation and Native Plant Finder, you will find all of these resources. And if you don't have a backyard or a front yard or even a porch, there's still plenty that you can do. Cities, towns, counties, utilities, and corporations own millions of acres of plantable land. You can have an impact on how they plant. For example, we know that the city of Melrose still plants street trees that are not native, mostly calorie pear trees, which do not sustain any caterpillars or bees on this continent. It's true that some birds can't eat the fruit, but they carry the seeds to local forests where the Callery pear then grows and multiplies and sprouts thorns and crowds out other trees that could actually help, while the pear is not helping or supporting any wildlife at all. So if you're a voter or a taxpayer or a customer, you can request that the powers that be plant our world differently. And you can also walk through conservation land with a pocket full of seeds. If there's seeds for native plants, how are you hurting anything? And you could be helping. Would you like some of these seeds? They are right here. Remember I told you about that book discussion that I didn't want to go to and I was wrong about? Well, I think 12 or 15 people came. I can't remember exactly how many. And somebody mentioned a person named Walter Kittredge. And I looked him up. Turns out Walter just retired from 45 years as the field botanist and head curator of Gray Herbarium at Harvard University. Walter lives in North Reading, about 15 minutes from here, on property next to a lake that he inherited from his grandparents. And that's where now he is giving all his time and expertise over to people who want to learn how to plant native. So I went to see Walter. And I saw in his backyard something he calls Oak Haven Sanctuary. It's a place where he rescues and nurtures and sells or just gives away hundreds of native plants every year. He welcomes groups and volunteers, kids, anyone who wants to spend time learning and potting or just walking around on his beautiful land. Walter will even come to your house and give you a private consultation about the plants that you have and the native plants that you could have. I heard his fee for that is something like $50. I asked Walter for seeds that we could bless and give away today, right here in worship, and he gave me these. Believe it or not, he says there are thousands of seeds in here for 36 different native species of plants. There's beautiful blue aster, yellow goldenrod, pink milkweed, purple gentian. And just one fingertip's worth, or a pinch like this, is all you need to fill up this whole container with seedlings. I know you have these at home. So if you come up here today after worship, during the postlude or afterward, you can take a pinch of seeds, put it in one of these envelopes, and take these instructions that I printed out. And you can take them home and plant them, or you can spread them around conservation land anywhere you want. Well, that's up to you. I'm just covering it in case anybody has a milkweed allergy. Also on the instructions are contact information for Walter if you would like to talk to him. He's easily available. I recommend this book and the Talamy presentation, which are linked in the midweek updates or in the worship reminder that I sent out this morning. Oh, and if people at home would like some seeds, I held some back. They're in my office. If you come to office hours, I will happily share them with you there. So, the bad news is our world is in trouble. But the good news is there is something, many things actually, that we can do about it. Things that are not difficult or costly or time-consuming, and the seeds to do them are already here in our hands. Now that we know better, we can do better. We can plant differently. And we can talk to our brothers and sisters, our cousins, our parents and children, like in today's story. Talk to them about the butterflies. Ask them about their memories of roly-polies and toads and chipmunks. Ask them what they've noticed lately and what they'd like to do about that. Let's end today with a prayer, if you would join me. Spirit of life, mystery and miracle of our existence, bless us yet again with your abundance. Bless our broken hearts. Bless our broken gardens. Bless these seeds. Bless our good intentions. Bless our righteous actions, and give us courage. Amen. For our closing hymn today, we have a song that is fast becoming a new anthem for our time, a call for hope and faith in this moment, which we pray will become the great turning. It's "We Shall Be Known." Please, choir, come forward. We will have the lyrics for everybody on a slide.
Since this is something that we'll be learning together, I'm going to have the choir say it through twice, and then have you all rise, please, in body or spirit. If you already know it, go for it right off the bat, but first the choir.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. One last time. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great
remain standing and join me in our chalice extinguishing words, which will be there momentarily. We extinguish the flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. You may be seated. Our service has ended. Now we'll enjoy a brief postlude from Tara on the piano. If people want to come forward and have some seeds, please help yourself. There are envelopes here and instructions, as I said. After that, we will go to the front lawn where we'll have coffee and snacks today. And folks in person, join us out. And folks on Zoom can have a conversation. And remember, at 12 noon today, our anti-racism conversation. Thank you, everybody, for joining us in worship today.